Yeah.
We just thought we'd kind of just ask you a few questions about your experience with Jurassic Park, with Hollywood, and just kind of go from there, see what kind of info we can get.
Sounds good.
All right, well, we'll kind of start from the beginning, I guess. The first question for you: how'd you start in film?
That's a good question. I'm from Michigan, and someone when I was in college, I went to the University of Michigan, and someone in college said to me, "You're going to be a great middle manager at a car company," and I about shot myself. So, I always liked theater. I did theater in high school. I did theater in college. I always liked that that aspect of, working closely together with a group of people and, putting on a show, and it was really fun. And then after, I don't even think I was thinking about film or TV. I was in theater. I did musical theater. I tap danced. I did all that shit. And I moved to New York, and I was working in New York and doing summer stock theater and regional theater and a little bit of off Broadway. And there was an ad in Backstage, which is the actors' newspaper back in the day in the 90s. And there was an advertisement for casting of a movie called Metropolitan. And I I went to the casting, and there were literally like 500 people there. I almost left a couple of times, but ended up staying and getting the job. And all of a sudden, because that movie was kind of a audience favorite, it went to the Sundance Film Festival, it went to the Academy Awards, and it just opened up a lot of doors. And so I started doing film and TV after that. And I still do a lot of theater. I'm involved with the theater here in Los Angeles. In fact, we're opening a show on Friday night. And um, so it's you kind of juggle all the balls when you're an actor. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. What's the name of the show that you're opening?
It's a play by Eric Grenand. It's called The Totality of All Things, and we're doing it at the Road Theater. It's part of their Summer Playwrights Festival, our Summer Playwrights Festival. We do 20 plays in like 10 days, and
Wow.
it's really fun. A lot of people come together, a lot of well-known actors, directors, writers, all put up these plays, and it's fun. There's a party after every play, so it's
Cool.
it's a good time.
Sounds like a blast.
It is.
Make it after that. No, it's funny you mentioned Metropolitan because we were going to ask a question about Metropolitan. We know it was nominated for Best Original Screenplay. So it was an audience favorite, but obviously it was a critic favorite too. Do you remember anything from like the filming of that?
Well, I certainly remember I thought no one would ever see it because the movie made absolutely no sense to me. I just didn't get it. I'm not from that world at all. I don't know anything about debutantes or, New York high society or whatever. I'm a kid from Michigan, and I just couldn't imagine anybody, it just seemed like these long sentences and these long paragraphs and scenes. And it wasn't till I think that was one of the successes of the movie, honestly, that I took my character, Charlie, so seriously and didn't think of it as a comedy. And I think that's what made it funny. And Whit and I are still pretty good friends, and I've worked with him a bunch of times, and I see him often. And I'm real proud of the movie. It's a fun project to be a part of. They've done screenings at the 25th and 30-year anniversary, and it plays usually like around the holidays and stuff like that.
Cool. Yeah. Were you at the Oscars when it obviously was awarded? Oh, nominated.
Yeah, it was 91, I think, and I was at the Oscars. I was living in New York, and I came out to LA for the Oscars, and it was really a blast. Michael Jackson was there, and
Oh, awesome.
yeah, it was really fun. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I know it. You mentioned Charlie is the name of, and we couldn't help but see that your son in Jurassic Park 3 was named Charlie.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
No, it was a funny little coincidence actually that you brought up Charlie. Yeah.
I'm still angry that in the most recent Jurassic, I was going to say, I'm still angry that I'm not angry that in the most recent Jurassic Park, Laura Dern's marriage broke up. I mean, like, what the hell? No one called
Yeah,
me.
we were wondering the same. Yeah.
Yeah, you're jumping ahead on a lot of our questions.
But we might as well go for
like
it.
we were gonna ask, were you made aware of the divorce of Ellie Sattler? Like that was one of our main questions.
No, it's funny. I had been cast in, and I auditioned for Congo back in the mid 90s, the Michael Crichton book that was turned into a movie about the lost city of whatever the lost city's name was, and the monkeys that were living there. And Frank Marshall directed that, and Kathleen Kennedy produced it. And I actually had the audition for Congo on the Friday that Barcelona, the second movie that I did with Whit Stillman, opened. And it was really funny when I went into the audition, back when people auditioned in purpose in person, and you met the director and all that kind of stuff. Frank Marshall threw a copy of the LA Times down on the paper on the table with a picture of Barcelona and me on the front page of the calendar section, and he said, congratulations. And so I felt good about the audition after that. But I got the role in Congo, and Kathleen Kennedy also produced Jurassic Park. And even though Frank didn't direct it, I know Joe Johnston directed it, and so I think she's wonderful, and Frank is really wonderful, and it was great to meet and work with them on Congo, and then to not really work with, for her again on Jurassic Park 3.
Wow.
Since you brought him up, we have to ask you. You mentioned it in one of your emails that Joe Johnston was an absolute mensch of a director. So do you want to kind of expand on that a little bit? What was it like working with him? His directing style?
Well, it's always hard to show up on a set for 1 or 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I don't think Laura Dern was in Jurassic Park 3 a whole lot either. That was mostly William. Bill Macy, thank you, and all that. It was their story. So, but Laura is part of the franchise of Jurassic, so it's different when she shows up. But when you're, I don't want to say a day player, but when you're playing a small part on a movie like that, it's always a little bit difficult to show up and feel free to bring yourself to the role, to really experiment, to try new things. And that's, to me, what acting's all about, is making bold choices, making strong choices, daring to fail, risking to make a fool of yourself a little bit. And Joe sort of allowed that on the set, even though I was only in a couple of scenes. There was the whole bit about if I tell you, I'll have to kill you and stuff like that. And he kind of encouraged me to have fun with it. And at one point, they were talking about, because it was a very hard shoot, not for me, but for them. They were changing the end of the script while they were shooting.
Oh, wow.
And at one point they were talking about bringing my character back at the end of the film to rescue the people on the island. And Joe was very upfront about, hey, this could happen. I don't know that it will, and it has nothing to do with you and all that kind of stuff. But he just sort of made me feel comfortable. He included me. He was easygoing. Again, on a big film, they're spending so much money that the director or the producer can be kind of tense. And Kathleen Kennedy was there the day I was shooting, which was really great.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just such professionals that they know the best way to get the best from an actor is to make them comfortable, and not to belittle them, or make fun of them or something like that. And Joe certainly didn't do that.
Well, that's great to hear. Do you still keep in touch with Joe?
I really have not. It's so funny you say that, because I just did a film that the script supervisor of Jurassic Park 3 directed. She wrote and directed it. Her name is Brenda Watchell, and she's pretty close with Joe. And when we were doing the film, I asked her about that, and she said that she had been in contact with Joe about her project and her film. And so I think Joe's, he's done so many great things. I think he's kind of moved on in his career to doing other things, but he's a mentor to people like Brenda, who was his script supervisor on Jurassic Park 3.
What about anyone else from the cast? Like anyone else that you keep in touch with outside of Joe?
Well, Laura would be the only one really,
Yeah.
only because she was the only one that I worked with. Sam Neill showed up a little bit, and I didn't really work with him, and I haven't seen him since. But I have seen Laura a couple of times, and I got to work with Laura's father, Bruce, on Chappaquiddick, and that was kind of fun
Oh.
to be able to talk to him a little bit about that. But I haven't seen Bill Macy, no, and I'm trying to think who else was in the film.
Taylor
Um,
Leone.
Taya Leone. No, I've
Yeah.
never worked with Taya, so I don't know her at all. But so really, no, Laura was the only one, and Brenda Watchell, the script supervisor. But otherwise, mm-mm.
Yeah, we tried to get Sam Neill and Laura Dern to talk as well, but I think Sam Neill's working on something in New Zealand or in Canada, I think at the moment.
Actually got a response.
Yeah, we did get a response. We were pretty happy with that.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. But
I want to tell you, I did this project. Perry Mason was an HBO TV series, and Robert Patrick was in that. And Robert Patrick, the actor, he was in
Terminator.
Predator. What was it?
Terminator 2, right? Isn't he the
Terminator 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not big on those movies. I don't watch all those action movies. I haven't seen any of the other Jurassic movies. So I'm really not the one to ask. But Robert and I were talking one day, and he was talking about showing up at fan events for Terminator. And he said that people like it so much that who am I? This is him talking. Who am I to not spend an afternoon there? And he really changed my attitude about doing things like this, talking about projects that you've worked on, whether it be Jurassic Park 3 or Metropolitan or Barcelona or any number of different projects that I've been involved with. People like to hear about it and talk about it, just like you guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he had such a positive reaction to that kind of engagement with people who liked his work. And it really changed my feeling about, who gives a shit? You know what I mean? Talk to these guys for a little while or go to that thing or, do that, project or whatever it is. And I think that's what makes movies kind of fun and special.
That's awesome.
yeah, sounds like we got to do Terminator next.
Yeah, we got to send Robert.
Sign me up.
Yeah. Got it.
I want to backtrack to one of your previous answers, because you mentioned that they were thinking of like an alternate ending where you would come back. And we actually mentioned it amongst us that you were kind of the unsung hero in the film because your character Mark worked for the State Department.
Yeah.
And that's how they got the Navy there. It goes unmentioned. So do you have any one, thoughts on being the unsung hero, and two, do you have any insight as to what that final scene would have been like if you were to come back?
Well, I do know that if I wasn't in Jurassic Park 3, there wouldn't be a 4, 5, 6. So
Exactly.
because I did save the day.
Absolutely.
And I get no credit for that at all. Spielberg has never called me. Dave Koepp has never called me. Although Dave Koepp, the writer of the original ones, is an acquaintance of mine, and he has a really funny story. Maybe I'm talking out of school a little bit, but I think Koepp wrote the first one, and there's a scene in the first Jurassic Park that Spielberg wanted, and Koepp was like, I don't know, Steven, I don't think that's going to work. And so he turned in his script, and Spielberg read it or whatever. And Spielberg said to him, I really want to do this one bit. And, so go back and work on it. So Dave went back and worked on it and said, listen, Steve, I tried again. It just doesn't work, and I forgot what the bit was. I think it was the bus falling down through the tree. Is that in Jurassic Park 1 and in the first one?
Yeah.
With the van.
Yeah.
The van falling down through the tree or something like that. And so one more time, Steven said, go back and write it again and see if you can figure it out. And Koepp said to him, Steven, I can't figure this out. And apparently Spielberg said to him, well, when I shoot it. So Koepp went back and wrote it.
Nice.
Now, again, I don't know if I'm talking out of school, so be careful about putting that out there. But that's a story that I always heard.
A soft truth. Yeah, we got it. That's fair. Going on what you said about how obviously you're the reason for all the Jurassic World movies. Have you seen them? Do you have any thoughts on them yourself?
I saw I've seen a couple of them because I had kids, you know, I have kids and they were sort of at the age and they wanted to see them. Though those aren't my kind of movies. I don't see a lot of, I haven't seen any of the Marvel movies. I haven't seen any of the Robert Downey Jr., John Favreau, and you know, they're Iron Man, you know, they're wonderful movies. Robert Downey Jr., you can't get better than that. John Favreau is an amazing actor, I think, and also director, but they're just not my sentiment. I go for, you know, smaller, more personal kinds of stories when I see films. So I haven't seen many of them.
What are some of your favorite
Sorry.
films? Like, no, that's fine. Like, what are kind of like as with films that are coming out right now? What are kind of at the top of your list right now?
Uh, I just saw Kind of Kindness.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Emma
And
Stone,
I liked that a lot. I liked Poor Things a lot.
Oh, yeah,
I like directors like that.
Yeah.
I think Emma Stone is amazing. You know, I like a little more off movies. You
Offbeat.
know, I mean,
yeah.
I'm trying to think what else. I did a horror movie, not really a horror movie, but like a psychological thriller called 1BR. And you know, those are the kind of movies. It wasn't a horror movie with blood and guts and all that. It was a suspenseful movie about a
Right.
cult. So, and I only bring that up because that's the kind of horror movie that I sort of respond to, as opposed to an all-out Saw or you know something like that. Trying to think of other movies recently. You know, I mean, I go back to the '70s. I mean, you give me Cool Hand Luke and Butch Cassidy, and I'm fine all day long in front of the TV.
Do you have a favorite movie of all time?
Yeah, I do. Heaven Can Wait, I think, is my favorite movie of all
wow.
time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Charles Grodin and Warren Beatty and Diane Cannon and Jack Warden. Just a great, you know, it's a fun movie, but it's funny and it's also sentimental.
Cool. That's awesome.
If you could work with any director, you know, all time.
Oh wow. You know, that's such a great question. And I hate to say this, I feel like my career has gone a different direction, that I'm not going to be able to pick to work with some of those directors anymore. I wanted to work with Spike Lee really badly when I was in New York and he was taking off and I was doing Metropolitan in Barcelona and a lot of those kinds of things. I just thought his style, he used such a unique style. You know, the camera work was part of the movie, and I really liked that a lot. A TV director that I worked with on Perry Mason, I would work with again in a heartbeat, and I'm blanking on his name, Tim Van Patten. He was the coolest fucking director. You know, we would do a scene and he would come by and he would just go, and that's all he'd say, or he'd come by and he'd go. And that was it. You know, he wouldn't speak. He wouldn't come and, you know, pull you aside and talk to you. He would just, you know, nudge you this way or nudge you that way. And those are the kind of directors I respond to. Jeff Reiner is a film and TV director that I've worked with a lot, that I would work with anytime. He has a movie in Tribeca right now. I forgot the title, but it's really wonderful. Gosh, you're asking me these questions, and I should have thought more about it, because there's so many wonderful directors whose work I really respond to, and you know, I will go see their movies, like Kind of Kindness, you know, without even knowing anything about the movie, because I know that they directed it.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's more about who's in charge of it, who's taking that project on, more about like, well, let me see what it's about first before I kind of dive in.
Well, that's the problem with TV, because you know, directors don't have, and I've been doing a lot of TV lately, and directors in TV just don't have that kind of power to tell the story their way. You know, they have to shoot it this way, and it has to be done by Thursday, and you got to say your lines and boom and move on. And there's no real chance for exploration. I did a TV show actually called Blue with Rodrigo Garcia, and he was really a wonderful director to work with, and he does a lot of movies. This was a TV show, but you know, we would shoot it, then we'd talk about it a little bit, then we'd shoot it again, we'd talk about it a little bit, we'd shoot it again, And each time you're kind of, almost like a pinball, going a little bit this way, then a little bit that way, but you're honing in on what he wants and what you feel comfortable with. And it was a very much of a collaborative experience. And I've done a lot of theater, and I work with a theater director named Randy Arney, who was one of the guys who brought Steppenwolf Theater Company in Chicago to national prominence. And Randy used to run rehearsals. Um, just we would just sit around and talk about the themes of the play. We didn't talk about the blocking, and we didn't talk about the dialogue. We just talked about, this was a play called Boy Gets Girl by Rebecca Gilman, and it was about a guy stalking a girl. And we spent the whole rehearsal just talking about, have you ever been involved in a relationship like that? Have you ever been stalked? Have you ever stalked anybody? And it was just a great way to work. And working with those kinds of people makes all the difference in the world.
Cool. I know you mentioned you got your start through theater, and I feel like a lot of actors start with that kind of as their nascent, I guess, entryway into the industry.
Sure.
And then obviously you're still doing it now. Like you said, this whole summer you're performing on stage. Do you see that there's a difference between how you have to block and act or prepare for a role for TV and film compared to being on stage? How does that kind of process work?
Well, that's a great question. And that's a question that everybody wants to talk about. You asked kind of a two-part question. What's the difference in the work? And also, what's the difference in the preparation? And there is a difference in the preparation because film is so fast. TV is the fastest. You gotta show up knowing what the hell you're doing, and boom, do it and get out of there. Film, you have 3-4 weeks, a month, a month and a half to kind of work on it and get into the character and learn about the different parts of the character's life. Theater, you have a month or two just to rehearse before you even start. So the rehearsal preparation process is very different. But I believe really strongly that acting is acting is acting. And there's no difference in acting on stage or acting on film. The only difference is where your audience is. On film, your audience is, this Zoom camera, which is like a foot from my face. Unfortunately for you guys. But in theater, the audience can be 10 feet away or 100 feet away. And so you have to allow your need to communicate what you're going after to reach the audience wherever they are. If the audience is a foot away, as Marlon Brando said, all you have to do is think about it, and it's clear. But if your audience is in a big theater, I did a show one time in an outdoor theater, where people were having a picnic, and you gotta communicate your desire to people that are eating a ham sandwich, 50 feet away or whatever. And so that makes it different. But the same is true in film. Lots of times in film, the camera is across the street, and we're getting just you and the character talking privately on the sidewalk from the vantage point of the window across the street or whatever. So the same is true there. Your audience is further away. That doesn't mean you over articulate everything. It just means you have to communicate to your audience wherever your audience is.
We could try standing way back there. The difference.
And I'll talk really loud.
Yeah.
Sorry, that probably blew your fucking mics.
Well, I think that's a really cool perspective. We had a question too about, like, speaking of directors, going back to that. Looking at two of your biggest projects, obviously Jurassic Park 3, the main one for us. Can you compare the directing style between Joe Johnston and Whit Stillman?
Oh my God, completely different. Completely different. Yeah. First of all, Whit's a really wonderful director, and again, I've worked with him many times, and I would work with him again without even thinking about it. But he is a micromanager, and he even says, no, it's not, and you're like, what's the difference in those two? Well, and I want. or whatever, whatever sound he's trying to get you to make. And so he's really on top of every little thing like that, which I'm not sure is good. But if that's how he hears it and that's how he wants it, it's the actor's job ultimately to do that. Where I don't think you know, Joe wanted the scene to come alive, and Joe wanted there to be life, and there to be, life. Life is the word. He wanted. I'm thinking of the scene when we were having dinner, and it's funny. I was nervous shooting that scene, and uh, he wanted it to be relaxed and life, and we're drinking wine, and my wife's old ex-husband or old boyfriend is there, and all that kind of stuff, and so Wit is concerned about the minute, small detail, and Joe is concerned about the big picture. And I think that's the difference in the two. And one is not necessarily better than the other. Um, I think if Joe were to be as concerned about the small details on a film like Jurassic Park, he'd go crazy. And that's probably why he's more concerned about the big picture, as well as he hires. I mean, I was a very young and inexperienced actor when I started working with Wit. And Joe works with, pros. Bill Macy is, I mean, the guy's great, So I think that's kind of the difference, if that is clear enough.
Yeah, that
absolutely.
paints a really cool picture, actually. Just minimalist versus maximalist, I guess.
Totally.
Yeah, that's cool. What led you to joining the Jurassic Park 3 cast? Like from where you started to where you are now?
Well,
Money.
Kathleen
Yeah.
Kennedy, right? From Congo.
Well, from Congo. Again, when we did Congo, I did not have a big role in Congo. Bruce Campbell, John Hawkes, and myself were the advanced team in this storyline where the main actors were trying to find where we had gone. So we were down in Costa Rica. We shot on the Sony studio stage here. We shot on the Warner Brothers stage, and then we went down to Costa Rica for a month. And John and Bruce and I had a lot of free time because we had to be there for every setup, every scene that the main actors filmed. We would go in and film, one day, and then the main actors would go there and film a week. So we had a lot of free time. And what was really cool about Kathleen Kennedy and Frank Marshall is, Costa Rica is a very delicate environment. And when a movie set comes in, they have trailers and trucks and all this kind of stuff. So to minimize the damage to the environment, they tried to use as few trailers as possible. And so they put John and Bruce and me in the same trailer with Kathleen Kennedy and Frank Marshall, and which was really fun. I mean, they're never in their trailer because they're busy, they're working all the time, and we were in their trailer all the time because we were never working. And but they were both so cool and relaxed and confident, and that whenever they did come into our trailer, we would talk a little bit, and Frank showed us some stuff that he was working on for the merchandising of the film and things like that. And I completely forgot what your question was. I was just telling you that story.
So how did
which I think is a great story.
Oh yeah, it's great. How did you end up auditioning for Jurassic Park, or did Kathleen reach out to you, or did you reach out to her?
I think they reached out to me for Jurassic Park. Yeah,
Okay.
that it was a good role for me. I forgot the year of Jurassic Park 3, but it was 4 or 5 years after Congo, and it was the kind of role, it was a good role to reach out to me for. It wasn't one of the lead roles, but it was a fun little role. And I think good producers and directors like to work with people that they know and trust. And it saves them a lot of headache to bringing in someone they don't know. Is this guy going to be an asshole? Is he going to be difficult? Is he going to fall apart? I did a small part. I see we're got some time, but I did a small part in the movie Babylon, and Damien Chazelle was so wonderful in that, so fun to work with. And even though I only worked on set a couple of days, I got to know Damien a little bit better in the ADR, which is done after the fact. But on the set, we were shooting, and I'm in a scene with 4 other people, and we all have a few lines, and we're talking to one of the main characters. And one of the guys in the scene, a very experienced, good actor, just went up. He just couldn't remember his lines. And Damien was so cool and relaxed and like, hey, no problem. Let's go back and let's do it again. He went up again. He went up again. He would call for line, and the script supervisor would give him line, and he couldn't say it. And so you don't know if that's going to happen. And finally, Damien said to me, Taylor, you just take those lines. But when you're casting a film, you know, this guy looked perfect for the role, and he's a good actor, but he just and you don't know if that's going to happen. And so on a big budget film, if you waste an hour, you waste a lot of money because an actor can't get their shit together and you know get the lines out. So I think that's probably why someone like Kathleen Kennedy reached out.
Gotcha. Great. Damon Chazelle talk about filmmakers. That guy's great.
Oh yeah. Just wild imagination.
Yeah.
And I would argue, very open to letting actors experiment. You know, I did a really funny thing on that they cut out, so I guess it wasn't that funny. But I was constantly eating. You know, they had they were passing hors d'oeuvres. It was a very fancy dinner party, and they were passing hors d'oeuvres with, you know, caviar and stuff like that on them. And so I was constantly eating, taking one, and you know, talking with my mouth full. And I thought it was really funny, but I can't even remember if they kept it or not. But they didn't keep it as much as I thought they were going to. But I guess the movie wasn't really about, you know, rich white guy number 3.
We'll have to break into the vaults and get
we'll
that
get the
deleted
director's
scene
cut.
out.
Right.
Yep. I think we're running out of time, so it might be a good place to start wrapping it up.
Sure. Yeah.
So we do appreciate you taking the time to speak with us, but we do have one very important question left, and that is, what is your favorite dinosaur?
The T-Rex, without a doubt. Yeah, come on. I mean, there's just no question.
The mother.
Yeah.
Go wrong.
Yeah. I mean, there's the is it the T-shirt where the T-Rex can't do push-ups? I mean, so yeah. Well, listen, I hope you guys have a lot of fun on the anniversary, and I think that all of the people that are involved in the film really appreciate this kind of attention being paid to their work. I know I do, and I had such a small part of it. I'm sure Joe Johnston and Bill Macy and I forgot who wrote the script. I don't think it was Dave Koepp, but they really appreciate it, and so you guys are keeping their work alive, and I think that's a great thing.
So, we filmed our own little thank you video to the patrons of the event that we'll pass along.
We'll send it over to you. Yeah.
Please do.
Thank you.
Please do. I'd love to see that. Yeah.
On the video we shot in Central Park. But,
oh, great.
Yeah. But no,
Great.
we really appreciate you taking the time talking with us. You know, I think we definitely got a lot of information that we do want to share with everyone once the event comes along. And yeah, I mean, anything else you guys want to add?
If you're ever in town or ever in LA, maybe we'll reach out.
Absolutely, please do.
That's my
Yeah.
cross. I really appreciate Taylor, you taking the time.
I'm sorry I'm not going to be there.
Oh, no.
Did you say it's on the 18th? Is that when it is?
Yeah.
18th.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm sorry I'm not going to be there on the 18th, you guys.
No problem. We appreciate you making time for us regardless. So
Absolutely.
This was an awesome experience to sit down, talk with you, learn more about the role, and honestly, just more about your experience and just Hollywood as a whole. I think we learned a lot of cool stuff inside and outside of Jurassic Park.
Great. Well, it was really fun. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks a lot. We appreciate your time and hope you have a good rest of the day.
Same to you.
All right, thank you.
See you.
Talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye.